Hey everybody, welcome back to the Razzball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beat joined by the Fantasy Master Lothario, the mustachioed man of mystery, the spectacled sports savant, Gray. How's it going, Gray? And
That's
by
me,
sports,
man.
baseball.
That's me, man. That's me. I was in Vegas this past weekend and we went over to Top Golf. I don't know if you're familiar with that is, but it's
Mhm.
like yeah, you know what it is? Okay, yeah. So I went over there and I was like, "Hey, anyone here got a 8 handicap because my podcasting partner does?" I was
Heck
then
yeah, we
asked,
got
I
like
was then asked to leave because I was screaming that during people's backswings. So it wasn't great.
were there any people there shooting TikToks and IG reels? I feel like that's the
You
only
know,
the only
one
thing
guy
that
actually,
Top
one
Golf has
guy.
done.
It was so it was. I don't know if anyone else people have been there who are listening, but it's basically like a bowling alley, but for golf. Like there's just a bunch of rows of people hitting the ball as far as they can, and there's there's screens there where there people are hitting it, saying how far the ball goes. So Cougs and I walk down the row of people hitting the ball as far as they can, and we get to and we stop at the guy who's hitting the ball about 250 yards, and we're like, "Wow, this is amazing. We're just gonna watch you." And it was like maybe 20, and his mom was there, and she was like, it was awkward. She was like, what are you old people watching my son for? Like, I'm a coach, man.
I just
I
want you to
just
know,
learned
Gray.
it. I
I
just
just want
learned I just learned the sport last week and I'm a coach now. So, go ahead. Let's see what you got. How far do you hit the ball anyway? I meant
yeah,
to ask you that.
I was just gonna say, just so you know, I average probably about 250, 260 on my drive. So
Wow, dude, that was like according to the Top Golf golfometer. I don't know what it's called. The golfometer said like 250 was basically the end of the cage, was like the end of the net. Like
yeah,
that was as far as you could hit it.
yeah. I mean that's about as far as they build out at Top Golf. But I mean, in a golf course, I mean, you can hit it,
Yeah, well,
as far as
obviously
you
the golf
can.
course is
Um,
is like the
yeah,
earth. I
I can
get it.
put it
You
in the
can hit
back
the
net.
ball. There's no cage on the earth. I understand how a
Yeah,
golf
yeah,
course
yeah.
works.
Hey, I don't presume to know what you know about golf.
You don't presume to know what I could possibly know about anything. Because if you overestimate what Gray knows, that's when you get disappointed. Uh,
Speaking of disappointments, Gray,
yeah.
Otani is done for the year. They say he has an oblique injury. I think he probably just told him like, "Hey, I'm done. We're not going to the playoffs. I'm done."
Yeah.
But I
I
mean that
actually, on the point of not only is he done for the year, but it seems like his Angels career is done because if he were to actually re-sign with the Angels, then he would have to go under mental exams. 'Cause then people would start to question what's going on between his ears if he were to re-sign with the Angels. So the assumption is he's done with the Angels. So I was thinking, it'd be actually kind of funny is like Otani's done with the Angels. Trout, they want to trade Trout this offseason. So let's assume Trout's done with the Angels. Then they come back next year and they become like a 100-win team led by Joe Adell.
Anthony Rendon, Joe Adele.
Anthony Rendon! Anthony Rendon is hilarious, bro. He literally was like, I'm going to be good from like March 5th through March 10th. And people actually fell for it in the fantasy baseball world. Oh man, yeah. So Otani's done. That's sad. Anyway, what were you saying? Go ahead.
No, I mean I was just gonna try and smoothly transition that like a professional podcast would into some talk about some award winners here. we're gonna start with like the real awards. Let's start with MVP, and I mean this can kind of the people that we're gonna throw out here are gonna be MVPs for the real game and our game, but just looking at it from I guess both perspectives. I mean, in the AL it really seems like it's like Otani, and then there's such a gap between him and whoever's next.
Yeah, for AL MVP. Yeah, I would say, I mean, it's Otani, and then it's been Otani since I think July, and then it's basically like 3 to 4 people competing to see who's going to come in second to Otani. I think right now I'd probably put my money on Corey Seager coming in second. I don't know. Julio Rodriguez has made a great case for potentially coming in second. It depends. I think for the MVP, as people realize that's it's for real baseball, so it might have something to do with like if the Rangers make the playoffs, or if the Mariners make the playoffs, or if one of those teams doesn't make the playoffs, then that might affect the final vote for coming in second to Otani. But yeah, I would assume it's probably like Otani, Seager, Julio Rodriguez, Kyle Tucker, maybe. Yeah, I mean, that's about it. Actually, I was looking at the player rater for, let's see, for guys who are, I just looked at, I accidentally clicked the wrong thing, and it showed me who the worst players were. Who are owned 100% rostered. Who are the worst guys who are 100% rostered per game? Any guesses? Any
The
guesses?
worst that are like
per game. So not just overall, but per game. I was gonna look at per game.
Bryce Harper.
No. Per
That's
game.
100% owned though. Like there can't
Yeah.
be that many people that are 100% owned.
Yeah,
Like,
no, there's a lot of abandoned teams.
yeah, that's
but it's a number of abandoned teams. Let's don't get wrong. Gotta be teams that are coming in last in leagues. You know what I'm saying?
Dansby, Tim Anderson.
Tim Anderson's not a bad guess.
Jose Abreu.
Let me see if I see Tim Anderson. No, he's actually Tim Anderson's not 100% owned. That's why he was up there.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was like, that's actually a pretty good guess, but I didn't see him.
What about
Tim Anderson wouldn't be the top. I mean, the bottom. Excuse me, the bottom of per game. You're not gonna guess it.
No, I'm probably not. I thought Tim Anderson was good. I thought that was like
the top. The bottom three are Carlos Rodon, Dylan Cease, and Hunter Green. Hunter Green's, mostly because he was injured for a lot of the year. And then Grayson Rodriguez, who's actually been good since he came back, but I rostered him during those terrible times, and why his per game is so bad. And then MJ Melendez, Dalton Varsho, Clay Holmes, Cole Reagans, Eugenio Suarez. Cole Reagans is obviously more because of what he was doing prior to him getting hot. Okay, so back to what I was actually going to do. The top for per game, the top 100% owned guys are obviously Acuna. Well, Woodruff. Woodruff is actually the top, but he just came on recently. And he was out for most of the year. So it's Woodruff, Acuna, then Spencer Strider, and then Corey Seager, which is kind of interesting. The next one, there's one guy, and then Otani, and then Betts. And you want to guess who the guy was between Seager and Otani? It's actually a pretty good one.
I think I actually looked at this when I was looking at my notes, but I'm going to try and remember try and see if I can remember it, because I have a terrible, terrible memory. Was it Jazz?
No.
No?
No, Jazz. No, Jazz. Let's see. Jazz is not a terrible guess. He's actually 34th on the list. So he's been good when he's been on the field. He just hasn't been on the field that much.
Yeah. I remember.
This is
Altuve.
basically. No, Altuve is a good guess, but Altuve is number 9. He's right after Betts. So it's a guy who's been excellent when he's on the field. He just hasn't been on the field that much. I'll give you a hint.
Royce Lewis.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I'm pretty sure I know.
That's a pretty big hint I just gave you.
Well, I mean that could be a few guys, but like I mean we've talked about Royce Lewis a few times, and again I had him. I looked at it at some
Royce
point like
Lewis has been
yesterday.
great. Yeah, he's been really good. I mean, Royce Lewis, if he can stay on the field, man, I wonder how high he goes in the in 2024 drafts, because like he's shown that if he can stay on the field, he can be as good as anyone. I'm guessing he's going to go like probably in the 75 to 100 range, which, I mean, he could, like, I'm thinking where like Buxton went this year, or like Yelich or Bellinger. Bellinger's actually top 10 for price for value per game too. And he's one of the few who actually has been good and played for most of the year. So it's not just that he's been good when on the field and not on the field much like Altuve or Royce Lewis. Cody Bellinger's actually been on the field and been great when he's playing, which has been a lot of the season. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting. Corey Seager coming in second behind Acuna for value per game if you exclude the two pitchers I mentioned, Woodruff and Strider.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty crazy that he's that, where he is. I only had that because I looked at it yesterday or maybe even today at some point to specifically look at some guys for our notes today. I think the Buxton like ADP is probably fair. I would assume he goes maybe a little bit higher than that, just because there's like a handful of people in any draft that just don't want Buxton at this point, and so that I feel like that drives down his price to some extent. So I could see him going a little bit higher than Buxton, but I feel like that's probably the right area, just given his injury history overall. But it's also like a young guy who, and we kind of tend to give, or at least maybe I do, I give younger guys a pass on some of the injury stuff as they're getting acclimated. So I could probably see myself taking him earlier than consensus, which I guess is somewhere, I would probably take him somewhere around 70 to 80, which I think is not that far from what you said. But like O'Neal Cruz went 70. I don't think he's necessarily going that high, but like Wander went 79. Like I could see him going where Wander went this year.
Yeah. Hopefully just in drafts.
Yeah, not following the legal path.
Yeah. Buxton actually, I mean, speaking of Buxton, I don't think he's going like within the first 175 next year. I mean, he's been awful. He's been really bad. So, and he actually has played, a decent amount. Like, even if he were like right now, he's going, I think Buxton is going, he's on the player rater at 371 overall, right by Giancarlo Stanton, who's another guy who's just, I mean, he might go at like 250 next year. I think he's maybe 200 just because of what he could potentially do. But I mean, both of them are going to just drop. Like, I mean, they are going to bottom. Their draft price is going to be bottomed out by next year. I just can't imagine drafting either of them, really. I mean, I might take a flyer at like 250 overall on either one, but only in deeper leagues for like a fourth or fifth outfielder kind of deal, like a draft and hold, maybe. I mean, even that, I feel like it doesn't sound appealing.
It's not the ideal situation to be in.
It really isn't. No. I mean, it's like it wasn't that long ago that was like Giancarlo. I mean, Buxton too, but Giancarlo was like, I mean, he was so good. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of like unrosterable. I mean, he really is in most leagues, even in like a 15-team league. It's just like he would be hard to have on my team.
Yeah, I would expect that I mean, he's going to go, they're both going to go because they can still hit for some power. And that becomes a little bit difficult to find as you get deeper in drafts as like big sources of power. So I could see them both getting drafted and still maybe higher than they deserve, based off of that and some name value. But I'd agree. I don't think that we're going to have kind of the draft prices we've seen on Buxton and Stanton specifically that we've seen before, other than in Rudy's War Room, where he will still love Giancarlo Stanton for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
And I will say, if his team wasn't so awful, Bobby Witt could like work his way into the like second, third, fourth MVP discussion in the AL. He's definitely turned it around from an average standpoint, which always helps the runs, the counting stats, and like he's been great, and he gets the defensive bump as well because he plays multiple positions, so and important positions as well.
Yeah.
Let's outside it's Acuna. I mean I feel like that should be locked and just set
Yeah.
aside right now. I
Yeah,
mean Mookie Betts is great.
I think if you think anyone but Acuna, you're nerding a little too hard. I think you gotta put down the baseball stats if you're thinking of anyone better than Acuna. I don't care.
But great, he has 13 more points in slugging.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's just some people who are just like nerding way too hard of like, oh, but are steals really that valuable? Like, come on, man. Like he's on the verge of like a historic season. I mean, he's already has it, really.
He
I mean,
does. He's the first
yeah.
person ever to do it. Now he
Yeah.
could also get 40-70. Like,
Yeah, I mean it's so I mean he as no brainer ish obviously a word as Otani is. I think Acuna is even more so. I mean Acuna is just like flat out just ridiculous this year. He's having the kind of year you won from every every player you've ever drafted in fantasy. This is the kind of year you want where it's like he's going like 110%. Like even like there's no slow down with him. Like even when like the Braves have won the division, he's still like stealing bases. Like he's got like it reminds me. I don't think we've seen anything like this since like Canseco, where it was like obviously he was trying to accumulate stats when he went 40-40 that one year. Acuna's doing similar. I mean, we've seen like, Judge chasing Maris and McGuire and Bonds and Sosa and those guys. We've seen those like, chasing history and trying to hit homers. But Acuna's like, I mean, not only is he trying to hit homers, he's trying to do everything. Like it seems like he's like every time he gets on first, he's trying to steal second, trying to steal third. I mean, he is just going like nonstop all year. So yeah, I mean, I wish I had him on a team. My only saving grace with Acuna is really that like I didn't even have the draft spot to take him ever. Like it wasn't like I was ever like even though I wasn't gonna draft him above like like a Trey Turner, which sounds so ridiculous at this point, but even though I wasn't gonna do that, I never had the chance to do it anyway. It's like I didn't even draft Trey Turner. I never had a draft pick that high, so it didn't even really matter for me. But yeah, and since you brought up Bobby Witt when we were talking about AL MVP, I got to bring up Freddie Freeman.
yeah, I was real wrong on Freddie Freeman. 19 stolen bases. That's crazy. Like that is double what he had ever
Were you
had
correct? See,
before
this is
last season.
the problem with like going out on a guy is you don't want to be the last one holding the bag when you go back in. So will you go back in next year, or are you out now until you are deemed correct for fading him?
I mean, he is what he is. I will not expect 19 or 20 stolen bases. Like you will never get me to put a 20 stolen base on a 35-year-old first baseman. Like I'm not going to do that. I feel like I was kind of right about the power, unless he rips like 6 home runs in the last 2 weeks here. The power is okay, but it wasn't. It's not 30 plus. But I mean, he's a great hitter. I was wrong. So I will say that I'm not gonna have him faded like I did this year. But I'm still probably gonna be lower than consensus because again, I'm not sticking 20 stolen bases on a 35-year-old. I'm just not gonna
No,
do it.
I hear you. I probably won't either. I mean, he's such a hard guy to get behind, like him and like Goldie, and it's just difficult to get like totally invested in a first baseman who is aging and you have to draft so high. It's like, yeah, I mean, that's why I like Matt Olson going into this year and why I have him actually on a bunch of teams. And I've been living well with Matt Olson. He's been fantastic. And the reason why I have him is because he was going at a decent price. Like if Freeman is going in like the third or fourth round, I'm all in. But there's no way that's going to happen. So
No.
yeah, I'm probably out either. I'm probably out as well. So
Yeah, because he's gonna go first round, back in first round, early second, and that's not how I don't build teams around, average and counting numbers guys early. Maybe to my detriment because I'm down in runs and RBIs in a few leagues this year because I went power speed combos maybe a little too aggressively. But that's just how I like to build teams out, and I feel safer taking power speed guys up top than counting on home runs, average counting numbers because I
I
took
think
Vlad
it's
in some places and that's been
yeah.
awful.
Yeah, exactly.
Soto,
Yeah,
same
Vlad.
thing.
Yeah, Vlad and Soto. Yeah, I mean, Soto's come on a little bit in the second half,
Yes.
but yeah, it's just, I mean, that's the whole thing. It's like it's so hard to go with these guys who are like so heavily reliant on counting stats because if those somehow like if there's just a weird unlucky year with runs and RBIs, and then you're sitting on like a guy who's hitting 25 homers with like 85 runs and 95 RBIs and hitting 290, it's like, okay. It's not, I mean, it's fine. I mean, I would take it, but I would take it at like, the fourth or fifth round where, like where I took Olson or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe the third or fourth, but wherever I took Olson, that's like where you want to take a guy like that. It's like, yeah, you don't need steals there, and you're not expecting steals there. You're just like, fine, give me power and hopefully runs and RBIs.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of Christian Walker. I had some of Alonso, um, and Olson just because they fell to the right areas in certain drafts. Walker was my guy, and that turned out fine. Like he's been perfectly fine for this season. I think he's top 5 first baseman. So I've been plenty happy with that. And I feel like that's kind of the area to target first baseman because there is such turnover seemingly year to year. Granted, Freddie Freeman has now been top first baseman back to back year. Or actually, he's not top. Matt Olson's top. But he's been, one or two the last 2 years. So making me look dumb this year. It is what it is. We can move over to Cy Young. Let's talk about some pitchers here, Gray. It's not our normal, topic is top pitchers, but let's talk about them because it's kind of a weird group. I mean, in the AL, it's like Cole, Gosman, Sonny Gray, maybe a few others, and then the NL, it's like, well, what are we looking for? Are we looking for like wins? Are we looking for strikeouts, ERA? Because everybody kind of has one, but nobody in the NL has the whole package, and I'm not sure how this is gonna, kind of kick out at the end of the season.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Garrett Cole has probably got, AL side basically locked up for his first Cy Young, which I was a little bit surprised about. I had forgotten that he came in second 2 years, and he had never won one. I thought I would have guessed he had won a Cy Young already if I didn't recently see that he hadn't won one yet. Anyway, yeah, I think Garrett Cole wins his first, and in the NL it is tough, man. I mean, I would say at this point it's probably a toss up between Justin Steele and Blake Snell. I I want to say it's going to be Justin Steele, but I'm guessing it's probably going to be Blake Snell. That's what I would guess. I don't know. It's a tough call. I mean, Spencer Strider, if he would have kept his ERA in like the 3.2 to 3.3 range, I think they probably would have gave it to him because he does have the wins and he has like incredible Ks. But I don't think they're going to give it to him because his ERA is a little bit inflated. And Steele and Snell, I think they both have like respectable enough ERAs where I think the voters will be fine giving it to him. And Justin Steele, I don't think has quite enough Ks, so I think Snell's gonna I think he's probably gonna edge it out. But it's gonna be close. I mean, it's still a little bit up in the air. Like if Blake Snell goes out and gives up 7 earned in 2 innings in his next start, the landscape could change. So yeah, I mean it's crazy how close it is considering how late in the year it is. But yeah, I'd probably say Snell and then Steele and then Strider will come in third, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at Strider, like there's probably 3, maybe 4 starts that cost him a pretty clear Cy Young probably running away. Like he had 4 starts where he just didn't have it that day and it was awful. I will say this might be one where the narrative could come into play on the NL side because if Steele leads the Cubs to a spot in the playoffs, that could definitely go in his favor because Strider is on a super team in the NL, and then Snell's going for a team that's not in the playoff picture at all. So there's a possibility that my boy Steele gets a little bit of a bump just for being in the race, but we'll see how the NL side goes.
Yeah, and also it's funny because in the big picture, I would say, for fantasy at least, I would say like Spencer Strider going away is the best pitcher in fantasy, like easily, like not even close. I just looked at per game again, and I randomly saw Jacob deGrom's name. Wow, that's a flash from the past. What happened with him, man? Wow. I had totally forgot about Jacob deGrom. Yeah, sad to see some of these names who are at the top for per game for pitchers. Jeffrey Springs, per game pitcher. Woodruff, like I mentioned earlier. Pepiot, Gibson Long, guys we might talk about a little bit later. And then Spencer Strider, then Jacob deGrom, then Clayton Kershaw, and then Drew Rasmussen, another guy. Man, no wonder why
you're just naming my team.
Yeah, I know. I had a lot of I like my draft and hold teams were exceptionally bad this year, and it probably is largely contingent on the fact that I had like Jeffrey Springs and Drew Rasmussen in so many leagues.
And Lance Lynn and Alec Manoah.
Lance Lynn and Alec Manoah. So there's wiping my hands. If you're not watching us on YouTube right now, I am wiping my hands and saying good night.
All right, great. Let's move over to what may actually have some fantasy, implications for us for next year, which is Rookie of the Year. Not so much to crown somebody, but these are the guys whose 8 APs could kind of determine whether your, leagues are won and lost a lot on Rookie of the Year candidates. Potentially, Corbin Carroll was a big one this year. He was great. Kodai Senga had he definitely turned it on after he figured it out. Spencer Steer had has a solid season. James Outman had a solid season. Matt McLean came on really hot and then cooled off. And then on the AL side, we had Gunnar Henderson. Tristan Casas has absolutely started hitting the ball and looks like the prospect we thought he was finally. Josh Jung was doing really well for a while. Royce Lewis, who we talked about on a per game. And then Edward Julian, who was kind of we've had him as a under the radar prospect, and he may stay that way. And if he does for next draft season, he's probably going to end up being, my middle infielder in a lot of leagues, and hopefully he doesn't do me as badly as Vaughn Grissom did.
One thing out of all those names you said, there was a couple I wanted to talk about, but one guy, Kodai Senga, like if he were if he were to won like 17 games, he could be in the Cy Young conversation for the NL. Like he is right now, he's sitting as we record this, he's sitting at a 2.95 ERA with an 11 plus K per nine with 11 wins. I mean, I know like wins are silly, so I mean, Senga's had a fantastic year, man.
Mhm.
I knew he was doing well. I have like talking about having a guy in every league. Senga's a guy who I actually do have like literally in every league because he's, as I was telling everyone in the preseason, his price was so inexpensive in drafts. Like he was going around, I think it was like 180, 190, even at the tail end of draft season where everyone was like, hip to what he could do. Like even after like the preseason games of showing the ghost forkball and all this, he was still going so late. Like there was no movement on his draft price. And he was like, I drafted him everywhere. It was really Kodai Senga. If there was anyone who was like helping me, like he was probably more so than anyone else across all my leagues. I was really, I really pushed him hard too for people to be drafting. So if people didn't draft him, that's on them. I'm blaming you, random podcast listener. And then on another front, the AL Rookie of the Year, like I mentioned earlier in the show, I was just in Vegas. And if they were still doing future bets where I could have bet on the AL Rookie of the Year, I still don't know who I would have bet on. Like, this is the most ridiculously close voting, or at least in my mind, it will be. The voting for the AL Rookie of the Year, I have no clue who it's going to go to. I'm assuming it's going to go to Josh Jung, but honestly, it could be Gunnar or it could be Casas. I don't know if it's going to be Royce Lewis. I just don't think he's played enough. But I think Tanner Beebe, another guy, like he has a sub 3 ERA as a rookie in I want to say like 150 innings. I don't have the number in front of me, but yeah, I mean he's done incredibly well. So yeah, I mean the AL Rookie of the Year I think is still up in the air, which is kind of wild considering it's about 2 weeks, a little under 2 weeks left of the season. Like Gunnar Henderson, you mentioned him. I think he's probably like he got drafted high, and I think he more or less paid off at the end. And I think he'll go high again. I wouldn't be shocked to see him, drafted in a similar spot to where he was drafted this year. And I would happily take him. I think he's super talented. He's looking at a season of like, if he hits 3 more homers, he's going to have a season of like 30 homers, 10 steals, 260. And his average feels a little bit low, a little bit unlucky as far as BABIP. So he's really kind of like a 270 hitter. Going into next year, I could see him being projected at like 32 homers, 12 steals, 265, 270. I mean, that's more or less what you were hoping from like, Goldschmidt, just to throw out a name. You would have taken it even from Freeman, even though you wanted more, but you would have taken it. Yeah, I think Gunnar Henderson's like he's one of those guys where I think he's set up to be like a star for many years. He's got great plate discipline. I'm a huge fan. Josh Jung, I like Josh Jung, and he plays at a good position. It's a little bit of a scarce position. So I could see getting interested in Josh Jung this preseason. For 2024, but he doesn't have any speed, so he's a little bit like he's not quite as exciting. Even though where he was going this year was a great value, and I was all about drafting Josh Jung in every league this year. But for next year, if he's up in like the top 100 overall, which I'm assuming he will be, I don't know. I might be out on Josh Jung. I'm not sure. I don't know. What's your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I mean, Jung definitely had some struggles, and it's hard to say whether that was injury related or what it was. It's just kind of an adjustment period. Came out of the gates, had 12 home runs in the first 2 months. I mean, he's going to be a power bat. I don't know where the average sits. I'd say if there's one place where I feel like he's going to drop, it's going to be the average. Like if he flipped him and made him like a 250 hitter and Gunnar Henderson a 280 hitter. Like I feel like that's probably where we're at. Gunnar since June, which is kind of when it kind of started to click for him. He's been a 280 hitter, 282 hitter since June to now. He's had the home run numbers come up. He's had at least 5 home runs every month, and he already has 5 home runs this month. We're 18 days into it. He's 16 games into it. So I feel like Gunner's going to go higher. I mean, it depends on where Jung's going to fall to. If he falls to 100 or after 100, I could see being in on him just because he is a legitimate source of power who could put up, the counting numbers to back everything up. He was already hitting in the middle of order. So if he just resumes everything and gets placed back in, I have no problem with that. But I'm definitely going to have Gunner higher. Let's go ahead and move off of that. Let's talk about just some numbers in regards to comparing seasons. I think I've put this note in here like 25 times through the season, Gray, and every time we're like, we'll get to it in the next show. So here we are, winding down the season. Let's talk about this real quick. Home runs per game, that is about the same rate as 2021, obviously up from last year and down compared to the full juiced era of 2020 and 2019. So we're really looking kind of at 2021 numbers in regards to the ball and its bounciness. I'm believing in regards to power. The runs per game is the highest mark since 2019. 2019 out of the super bouncy balls, we had the pitch clock and all the stolen bases and everything going on this year. Plus they put in the mid bouncy ball. Stolen bases is the highest mark in the 2000s. The last time that we had a stolen base mark this high was 1999, back when stolen bases were thought to be of value. So that's a huge jump for stolen bases. And what I want to ask you, Gray, is we're looking at these numbers. Are you adjusting your rankings at all for next year, or are you potentially, moving your marks as far as what you want to hit? From your categories, where are you at?
Yeah, so I have a couple thoughts. So first of all, with the home runs, I was looking at like the team marks for home runs, and incredibly, the Guardians have like 120 home runs as a team right now, which is like, I think they're like 20 worse than the Washington Nats. Like the Guardians are really bad for power. So I was like curious, like, so how long ago do you think we've had a home run, a team that has hit less than 100 home runs?
Less than 100.
Mm-hmm.
I would assume you'd have to go back to like the 70s.
Yeah. Well, that's what I thought too. It turns out in 2011, the Padres did it. The 2011 Padres.
Oh, the tank
They
year.
hit 91 home runs. Their top home run hitter was Ryan Ludwig with 11. What happened there? I lived through that. I not only did I live through it, I was blogging about it. I don't remember that. That's insane. The second best home run guy was Nick Hundley with 9 homers. What? When did that happen? In 2011, apparently. Okay, so anyway, that was a sidebar. For fantasy and adjusting rankings, I think I'm going to look at it like how I look at position scarcity, where like some people, I think there's two ways you can look at like the steals being up so high. You could look at it and be like, well, everyone can get steals, so you just punt them more or less and get them later, which is like how people look at like, shortstops. Like, oh, it's a deep position, so I don't have to draft one, in the first round. Well, I look at it actually as the opposite. So if you have guys who are getting that many steals, you better make sure you have a lot of steals on your team. Like, you want to be able to say that you are going to be top 3 in steals. Like, you don't want to punt a position, just a position or a category because there's a lot of it. You want to make sure you have it. So I'm probably, if there's 2 ways of going about getting steals next year, and one of them is saying I'm going to punt it and just get steals later because everyone's stealing bases, then okay, you go and get your Estuary Ruizes, or your steal guys later. I think I'm going to do the opposite and just like try and get as many steals as I can. Not necessarily, and that doesn't mean necessarily drafting like all like 40 steal guys. I mean, I'm just talking like not necessarily like punting or ignoring steals in general early on. I will, just like how I said with shortstops, like just because there's a lot of them, I want the good ones. And just because there's a lot of steals, I want the good steals. So yeah, I think if anything, like in general, I think that's probably the path forward for steals and rankings. In a very general sense. As for homers being up, I think it's the same. I mean, you got to draft a lot of homers. You got to draft a lot of homers and a lot of steals next year. Otherwise, you're going to be left in the dust. And I know it. Like I have leagues where I have one league where I'm doing awful. I have a few leagues where I'm doing awful, but one league where I'm doing really bad. I'm like 70 homers behind the leader, and I've been 70 home. I mean, I've been so far behind that you can't catch up when you're that far off. Like there's no catching up. So yeah, and if you fall behind in homers specifically, then you're probably going to fall behind in RBIs, and if you fall behind in steals, you're probably going to fall behind in runs. There's exceptions to the rules, like Ruiz, like I mentioned earlier, is probably going to end up with more steals than runs. So it doesn't necessarily, they're not always correlated, but more often than not, they are. So yeah, I don't know. That's my thoughts.
No, I mean that's completely fair. And I will say though, like it's really hard to build out a team where you have a lot of both of home runs and stolen bases. Like it's this year specifically, I feel like it was really difficult to come away with 12 points if you're playing a 12-point league or 12-team league, like 12 points and 12 points in home runs and stolen bases. It certainly can be done if you have the right combinations. I think in our Perts RCL, you're like 11 and 10 or 11 and 11. So like you're really close on that one.
I'm killing it in I have 11 homers and 11 steals in our Perts league. I mean, my offense is ridiculous in that league. And my pitching's been not bad. So, yeah, I had the good fortune of drafting number 1 Bo Bichette. No, honestly though, I did draft Bo Bichette in the first round, and that shows you that even with I believe Bo Bichette is the worst first rounder this year, and Mike Trout is like the worst top 20 guy, and Bo Bichette's only like second. I don't know. Our commenter Vin, every week he puts in like the top 20 where they were drafted and where they are now on the player rater, and I believe Bo Bichette is like the second worst. But it shows you that you can make up for bad picks. Like my team is doing really well in our league, and I had like this, the second worst top 20 pick. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can come back from that if they get injured. That's kind of where if you lose all the production, it can be a little tough. But yeah, I think Bo is currently the lowest one on the player rater among first round consensus picks. For a while, it was probably Machado or Soto, but they both got it back together and don't suck
Trey
anymore.
Trey Turner
Um,
Trey Turner's owners would like to have a word with you too. Up
yeah,
until like July, it was like, oh man, he's terrible.
yep. And Corbin Burns owners as well. Same
Yeah.
kind of thing. Like he was real bad for a while and then got it all together. So the end of the season is going to look fine for a number of guys, and it was bad. It was tough for a few of those guys early in the season. I know this because I had a number of those guys we just talked about, and it was tough. It was really not great. Wondering if I should start Corbin Burns. That was a really weird space to be mentally. Let's talk about some promotions real quick, Gray. Heston Kjerstad was promoted by Baltimore. 46 games in Double A. He had 11 home runs, 3 stolen bases. He had 310, 383, 576, 15% K rate, 7% walk rate, 76 games in AAA. He had 10 home runs, 2 stolen bases. He had 298, 371, 498. He had a 20% K rate and an 8% walk rate. Assuming he's going to get playing time here, is he somebody that you're adding across the leagues, or is this more of a wait and see?
Yeah, I think it's probably at this point you just have to go for guys who are actually hitting versus like a sexy call up because there's not enough time really left in the year to be looking for guys who could potentially take off like down the road. Like you need someone who's actually doing well. So it's like Robbie Grossman or Heston Kjerstad. Well, Grossman's actually hitting, so I would never say like if this was April, I would never say look at Robbie Grossman, but right now because of where we're at with the in the season, and Kjerstad looks good in general. I'm not really interested in him for redraft leagues. For dynasty leagues, more or less what you talked about. He has good power. It looks like he could potentially hit like 25, maybe plus homers. He's really got to come up and play though, and the fact that he hasn't, like, unlike a lot of the Orioles prospects, like they've promoted guys by this point. They've been promoting guys. Jackson Holliday is the only one left, but he's super young. But I mean, they've promoted guys, and the fact that they didn't promote Kjerstad makes me wonder, like, is there something up there? Like, is he just like a platoon bat who's got some power and it potentially could have like contact issues? I don't know. Maybe. I mean, he has no speed really. So I'm not crazy interested in him for next year or keepers really either at this point. I mean, he needs a job before before I can really get excited about him at all, because if he doesn't have a job, then I'm absolutely not interested. But if he has an everyday job, I don't see him playing every day against, at least against lefties, and that's fine. I mean, there's worse things than platooning out a lefty versus lefties. So, I mean, that's understandable, but I don't really know really how, like, his numbers to me look like what you could potentially what you're looking at from like a Kerry Carpenter in best case scenario, which is like 27 homers, 245, 250 average, no speed, which is fine. I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not super exciting for most shallower leagues.
Yeah, I will say, I like Carpenter. I think he has maybe a little bit more power than he's shown so far. But yeah, I would tend to agree. You're looking at similar lines here. I guess the question for this year is really where would Heston play? Um, he's got the start at DH, hitting out of the 8th spot today. That's not exactly an ideal spot for somebody that you're starting in your playoff, or not playoff. Maybe you're in the playoffs, or whether you're chasing kind of the last bit of stats you can squeeze out. Not ideal. Couldn't have really predicted Ryan O'Hearn was going to hit 350 at first base for the O's. Mountcastle's been fine. The outfield is pretty set, and they still have Aaron Hicks, who they're rotating in. So like it's just a matter of I don't think he's going to play enough. So to your point, pick somebody up who's playing and hitting, somewhere in the top or middle of a lineup. Moving over to the A's, they promoted Joey Estes and Joe Boyle. Estes had 104 innings at Double-A, had a 3.28 ERA and a 1.1 WHIP, 23% K rate. He had 32 innings at Triple-A, which were not ideal. He had a 5.23 ERA, 1.35 WHIP, but it was only 32 innings, so that's kind of whatever it is. And then Joe Boyle, he started with Cincinnati this season, moved over to Oakland. He had only 35 or 33 innings with Oakland. Before that, he had 84 innings with Cincinnati, where he had a 4.5 ERA, 1.64 WHIP, 31% K rate. It's really the Ks on Boyle that he's bringing to the table. I don't know that either are necessarily getting starts, or they may kind of piggyback here. I'm not exactly sure what the plan is for Estes and Boyles here. Do you have any ideas in regards to them, Gray?
I believe I read somewhere that Boyle was going to be pus-filled. No, Boyle was going to be piggybacking. Yeah, he's going to be coming in after an opener. I don't think I read anything on Joey Estes. I thought he got sent down. Even maybe I don't know. Maybe he's not. Maybe he's on the team still. But yeah, neither guy are really interesting to me. I mean, if you're really struggling to find someone who would come in like the second inning and pitch for a couple innings and maybe surprise with a win, even though it's the A's, so that would be really surprising. But I mean, maybe Joey Boyle, because he did have solid strikeouts in the minors. But yeah, I'm not really interested in either of them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not interested really for this year. It does look like, at least tentatively, Estes scheduled to start Wednesday, Boyle on Friday, and again maybe both maybe with an opener, or they may be acting as kind of a few inning opener. But yeah, I don't think there's much here for this season. Boyle's K rate is very nice. The walk rate is very awful. So that's one where it's fun to watch, but maybe not for your fantasy team. Kyle Hurt was called up by the Dodgers, another high K rate guy. He had 65 innings at Double-A, where he had a 4.15 ERA, 1.28 WHIP, and a 39% K rate. 23 innings at Triple-A, where he had a 3.09 ERA and a 1.03 WHIP, and a 37.6% K rate. I really only put him in. We don't normally talk about relievers, but he had a 2-inning relief effort, and he could potentially get a save opportunity as LA is kind of trying to give their bullpen a rest here down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, last I heard he got sent down, but he could get called back up if they need an arm, which they probably will in the final 2 weeks. So yeah, I mean, he looked actually. I caught like an inning of. I didn't catch it. I'm not Austin Barnes. I watched an inning of him, and he looked fantastic. I mean, he looked really good. I was kind of interested in him in a keeper league of mine. And it's NL only, so it's different. For everyone, it depends on your how deep your league is. But yeah, I mean, he looked good. He's kind of older though, so I don't know. Maybe maybe something potentially as like one of those high leverage, crazy good setup guys, like a Devin Williams, and then he becomes the closer, like in season. I don't think he's going to start the year as a closer. I'm talking about 2024 at this point. I don't think he's going to start the year as a closer, but I could see him potentially getting like the 7th or 8th inning to start the year next year, and then becoming the closer, because he looks fantastic. But we'll see. I mean, that's a lot of things could happen between now and then.
Yeah, great. Let's go ahead and move over to some late season second half performers. We've talked about some of these guys, so we won't linger, and we kind of know what a few of them are. Jordan, I just put this one in for you, Gray. He has 11 home runs in 45 games. Hitting 327, 443, 594 the second half. I mean, he was everything you wanted when he was healthy, Gray.
Yeah, I know. It's gonna be really complicated for me to not draft him again next year. I mean, I honestly I expect him to be going at a fairly reasonable price too. I just know, like I kind of knew with Matt Olson, and I'd said it like 2 or 3 years going into this year that Matt Olson at some point is going to hit 50 homers, and at some point Jordan's going to hit 50 homers. I don't know if it's going to be next year. I don't know if it'll be the year after. I don't know if he'll never stay healthy and it'll never happen. But he's capable of 50 homers. It'll happen if he stays on the field. Like I honestly I can't imagine what is going through Dusty Baker's mind and putting Jordan in the outfield ever, ever. I mean, he's so clearly a utility only guy and a DH. But yeah, I mean, Jordan looks fantastic when he's on the field. Like there's no problem with him when he's actually hitting. It's just getting him to the batter's box, really.
Yeah, I mean that's been the only issue. I mean, every time he's healthy, he's absolutely raked. Sometime down the line, hopefully he can stay healthy and just put up that magical season. I'd expect him to go kind of in that. Maybe we're like Luis Robert was going this year, kind of the same thought process. Hits when they're healthy.
I'm in. I'm in. Don't tell me anymore. I'm in.
just let you have him right there.
Let me have him.
All right, we already talked about Altuve a little bit. He did great things when he was healthy. I don't think there's really a whole lot to cover there. Trey Turner, we mentioned him. He had a terrible start to the season. Second half, though, he's in 57 games, 16 home runs, 8 stolen bases, 308, 365, 598. The stolen bases are still down a little bit for him, but power turn, the average, all the counting stats, everything else that you wanted from him returned. He's going to be a very interesting one for draft season as well. Who buys the second half and who's leaning on the first half as signs of bad things to come.
So me and you have to do our top 25 draft. I guess not next week, but the week after.
Yeah, so we'll see if he can sneak into that.
I think
or
he
if
will.
He's going to be outside of it.
I think he might. I don't know.
Definitely working his way back in the conversation there.
I can only draft Bo Bichette like 5 or 6 times in the top 25.
You're not taking Bo in the top 25, are you? Are you? Do it again.
We'll have to save that for our top 25.
All right. We talked about Royce Lewis. We talked about Gunnar Henderson. We talked about Jazz Chisholm briefly. Let's talk about Seiya Suzuki. 56 games here in the second half. 11 home runs, 5 stolen bases. He had 296, 352, 549. Is this just what he does to us, or is this like Seiya's figured out and now we can know what to expect from him?
I think in retrospect, next year in June or July, we're going to look at Seiya Suzuki's second half, and we're going to be like, yeah, he had a hot streak. I think that's all it is. Honestly, he needs to do it for a full season before I'm fully invested at this point, because like I've seen it for a few games now from him. I've seen it for a month plus, but I haven't seen it for an extended period of time where I totally trust him. So I don't mind him. Like if he's going at like 175 to 200 overall, then sure. I mean, at that point, everyone's got risk, but I'm not totally invested in Seiya Suzuki being fixed in any way.
All right, fair enough. CJ Abrams is a guy who came on kind of in the Royce Lewis mold of just needed to get on the field and stay healthy. Not quite as bad as Royce Lewis in that regard. 58 games, though, in the second half. He had 11 home runs, 27 stolen bases. Average was only 239, but CJ Abrams is going to be a high stolen base target for next year, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. There's going to be like CJ Abrams feels like one of those guys that is going to be, that is going to be like insert like player A and player B, and they're going to take the names away, and they're going to be like, well, player A is CJ Abrams and player B is Trey Turner, but you're drafting Trey Turner 4 rounds before him. I don't know. I could see CJ Abrams being played into that sort of take the names away game. I loved him coming into this year. I wrote a sleeper post for CJ Abrams. I drafted him everywhere. I have C.J. Abrams in that RCL league where I'm doing really well in that league with us. Yeah, he's been great. I've had no complaints about C.J. Abrams in any of the leagues where I drafted him. He's been fantastic. I'm actually kind of surprised at how much power he's shown. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much more I would expect. I feel like this is, I would take a repeat. Absolutely. I don't think we can expect more from this, though.
Yeah, I mean he's only 22, so it's hard for me to say anybody at 22 is capped out on their power. So we'll see. I mean, I think
Okay, but you could say someone at maybe at 22 and 145 pounds, they could be tapped out on their power because he's like, I mean, he's like a stick. I mean, he's really a small guy. I can't believe he can how much powers he can actually hit. I don't know. I'm
yeah.
surprised.
I mean, he's 6'2", so he's got the leverage. That helps.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
fair.
I would take height over weight as a golfer in regards to hitting the ball far. So it definitely can still happen. But like
Yeah.
he's had 4 home runs this month already in 13 games. He had 4 home runs last month. I mean, if he just has three in a couple of the months where he had 1 or 2, like he can be a 25 home run guy. I think at some point. But you're right. I mean, there's not a lot of like he's not going to grow into bigger frame. He's not getting taller. I wouldn't
He's
think.
not going to fill out.
Yeah. Spencer Torkelson, he could still fill out a little bit still. And he doesn't really need to because he's hitting home runs now. Second half, he had 16 home runs. Stolen base, he had 240. So kind of just, I mean, power only. But Spencer Torkelson finally showed up and hit for the power we thought he had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, agreed. I think he's similar to like what we were talking about earlier, though, with like guys who have all power, like Josh Jung, guys who have power and no speed, because I mean, unfortunately, I like Torkelson. Don't get me wrong, but if he has a 27 homer, 75, 85 runs, 85, 95 RBIs, 250 average, and no speed. I mean, it's okay. It's hard to get crazy excited about that, but that's kind of where I would be looking at him. Like what if he does that? Was that 130 overall in ADP roughly, which is, yeah, I mean, okay, I can see the pick, but I don't see the upside necessarily. I mean, I guess the best case scenario is he becomes like Christian Walker and he has 35 plus homers and hits 260 and gets the runs and RBIs that comes with that. So, yeah, I mean, I guess I like him though. I just, it's hard to get super excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I'm a little bit more excited. I see, still potential for growth. He's only 23. He had a partial, season last year, and this is his first full season. 28 home runs, 233 again is not ideal, but I think there's a little bit of room to grow on that. So, a 30 home run guy. I mean, he could go. I'm thinking like cheap Josh Jung. Like if
Yeah,
you miss out on Josh Jung, grab Torkelson, you might get the same numbers, honestly, in the
yeah,
season.
probably minus 25 to 35 points in average. Probably, I mean, I'm talking projections, not necessarily what they're going to do, but they'll probably be projected for about 25 points in average difference, with Jung being better, roughly. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's not a totally absurd comp. I could see that.
Yeah, and I honestly, if we're looking at it, I don't know that the average part really is something that I would buy into either, because it looks, I mean, from what it looks like Jung got lucky a little bit this year. Torkelson got a little unlucky. If we're looking at strikeouts and potential for swing and miss, it's Jung over Torkelson. Um, Torkelson might be somebody I'm pushing up at least deep in drafts compared to others.
Better lineup in theory for
Yeah,
Jung.
that's true. That's very true. And then one kind of out of nowhere that I wanted to bring up because he popped up on the player radar, and I was like, oh yeah, he's been pretty productive, as we're looking at it, and that is Nolan Jones for the Rockies. I mean, second half he's had 56 games, he has 11 home runs, 8 stolen bases. He's hitting 269, 354, 527. So I mean, looking at a power speed guy playing in cores half the time, you could do worse than what Nolan Jones has done this second half.
Yeah, no, totally. Nolan Jones he's also on Team Albright in the RCL League. He's my starting first baseman. I also have Pete Alonso though, so he's at corner. But yeah, Nolan Jones he's been great. I mean, I think Nolan Jones, maybe it's the name Nolan, but it's like Bud Black only starts one rookie every 7 to 10 years. It was Nolan Arenado 10 years ago, and now it's Nolan Jones. That's it. That's all Bud Black's got room for. I got room for a Nolan. That's it. Nolan Jones has been great, and I think he's going to be a steal. He feels like a guy who's probably going to get a sleeper post, and most people, like one of those guys who is going to go, aggressively in quote unquote expert leagues, and then fall like in casual leagues. I could see ESPN ranking Nolan Jones like after 250 overall. Like no one in casual leagues is going to be interested in Nolan Jones, but yeah, I mean he looks like probably what the 3-hole hitter for the Rockies, maybe 4, depending on if Chris Bryant is healthy. I mean he's a no-brainer, Nolan Jones.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's going to be easy profit. He's not getting talked up. I really don't hear him. Like you said, people are going to kind of catch on with his second half, and he's going to get talked up a little bit. But I mean, we're looking at a guy who, across the full season, would probably be on pace this year if we're going to just do the Mr. Prorater and just throw this out there. I mean, he's like a 25, 18, 275 hitter. Like
sign me up.
That's pretty solid, especially he's probably gonna go after 200, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, he's gonna be a steal. He'll be a sleeper for sure. I'm sure a lot of people will be talking him up for like expert leagues, but in casual leagues, we were in Vegas this weekend with my brother-in-law. It was his birthday, and one of his friends, and the friend talked about like he was talking. He plays fantasy. The friend. And he didn't really like. It was interesting being around someone who like casually into like fantasy. And it's like most people play fantasy. They're not as invested like lunatics like us. Like we're the rare like 2%ers. Like most people are like Nolan Jones. What team is he on again? Oh, the Rockies. Okay, and he's good. Yes, he's good. Like it's like that's all most people who play fantasy like they don't need to know launch angle and all this other nonsense,
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of people just kind of want to be told what we can expect from people. What are their numbers? Exactly. Where do I draft them? Yeah. How do I win my league? Tell me. Yeah. So that's what we're here to do. We'll try and do that for you. Let's go ahead and move over to the waiver wire, Gray. We're over an hour now. Give the people some names to look at for bats, and I'll throw out some pitchers, and then we will get out of here.
Okay, let's see. So at the top of the player radar, we have our favorite guy who is named Robbie Grossman, huh? Robbie Grossman. You're late in the year when you're like Robbie Grossman, man. Robbie Grossman is gonna win people head-to-head leagues, and that's funny. See, that's the kind of thing where it's like at the end of the year, people are like, "Oh, I just want to win my league," and how do I do that? And it's like, oh, pick up Robbie Grossman. And it's like, yeah, but if I have Robbie Grossman, then like my league mates will know that's, I'm doing like voodoo or something. And they're going to try and burn me at a stake. And that's just not cool. Anyway, so Robbie Grossman's at the top. Jake Rogers, he had a multiple homer game on Sunday. He's been hot. Mark Kenha has been really hot. Brewers outfielder. Chris Bryant actually has been hot. Word of caution on any Rockies hitters who have been hot. They were just in Coors last week, and now they're not in Coors. So, take that as much as you want. Michael Massey's been hot. Edward Julian has been crazy hot. I was saying on the site earlier today on Rasball, I wrote up Edward Julian's probably the number one pickup right now. Like, he's been so crazy hot. If not him, then maybe Brent Rooker. If he's available in leagues, like he's also been crazy hot. He had a great April, and now he's having a great September. May through August, not so good for Brent Rooker. But anyway, Tyrone Taylor's been hot. Christian Encarnacion Strand hit a home run on Sunday, but Dumbbell doesn't really play him. Jason Hayward's been hot. Lamonte Wade Jr.'s been hot. Jonah Heim has actually started hitting again, even though I think he still has a busted wrist, which, he shouldn't be even playing, but he's hitting. And Evan Carter, Kevin Biggio, and Carlos Santana, the first baseman for the Brewers, has been hot.
Yep, those are good names. Moving over to the pitching side, Bobby Miller versus San Francisco. Reese Olson at the Dodgers, at Oakland, at Dodgers. If you can avoid that one, go ahead and avoid that one. At Oakland, feel very comfortable with that. Hyun-Jin Ryu at Tampa Bay. Kyle Hendricks versus Colorado, not in Colorado. So him and Jordan Wicks are both starts for me. Chris Sale gets to go back versus the Chicago White Sox. Wade Miley at St. Louis. Ken Waldichuk versus Detroit. There's a few starters for you. If Ryan Pepiot happens to be out there, I don't know exactly who he's going up against, but Ryan Pepiot has been absolutely amazing since his recent call up. In his 2 starts, I believe, since getting called up, he's been very good. So I would have no problem starting them. Actually, I guess it's been 4 starts for Pepiot, but either way, go ahead and grab him. Bullpen, there wasn't really anything to report. If you really wanted to know, basically go listen to us at the end of last week's show, because all those bullpens are still the same bullpens that we were talking about. If you have specific questions as you're coming down towards the end here, find us on Twitter. I'm at RazBeaton. Gray is, of course, the owner of the @Razball account. You can send us messages or send us a tweet out there. Comment, rate, review, wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching us on youtube.com/RazballFantasy, you can leave a question out there and we'll get to it in the comments out there as well. Until next week, Gray, good luck as we're wrapping up the season. Not much time left.
All right, man. Late.